So to those of you who have no idea what this is about, all right, you're going to have to be patient for just a hot second because we're burying the lead here, somewhat. Shoe has gotten into trouble again, and somehow, as always, this is blown back on me. I never expected my association with Shoe0nHead to be something that, like, I optically would have to take into consideration, you know? Like, given my reputation, I expected that she would always be the one apologizing for this or for that, and to an extent, she certainly has. But in this case, you know, the shoe is on the other head, as one says. Okay, so the drama essentially is this. Okay, Shu got brought on as the social media co-director for a right-wing populist organization in New York, and then there was some backlash, and like 20 seconds later, she left that organization. And people are mad. And they have a right to be mad. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I feel like one of the most long-standing criticisms that I've gotten with regards to Shoe0nHead is not answering the shoe question. So that's what we're going to be doing today, okay? We're going to answer the Shoe0nHead question. All right? Now, as far as denunciations go, there are always going to be people to whom this is completely inadequate because nothing short of denouncing her and, like, burning her fields, insulting her land is a sufficient, you know, like, response to something bad she's done. So to those people, I can't do anything. But let's talk about Shoe0nHead and her problems. So, some very basic background, and then we'll get to the question, okay? So for those of you who don't know, Shoe0nHead was a skeptic YouTuber, okay? She's been on the platform for quite a bit longer than I have, and she was quite popular back in the day and remains popular today. And her content back in, say, 2016 was very similar to a lot of other content at the time in that it was anti-SJW, which means that in the most immediate sense, it was a criticism of the sillier elements of the left, but in practice, it ended up being kind of a broad denunciation of left-leaning ideals. Kind of the same way in which, like, if you make a cringe compilation about, like, feminist activists, even if all you do is mock the silly elements of the feminist activists, you're still kind of denouncing feminism implicitly through association. You know what I mean? Like, if the only content that you make is finding like the cringe lefties, even if you just make fun of the cringe, the implicit attack is against the broader left because the audience forms a perception of the left that is skewed by the misrepresentation of their positions. You know, there's an implied generalization, and that was really really common to the skeptic community. Now, to be perfectly clear, okay, Shoe0nHead's content was not as bad as a lot of other people's was during that time. You know, I don't think that's whitewashing. It really wasn't. I mean, there's a pretty big difference between like the type of content Shoe was doing at the time and the type of content that Sargon was doing and then continued to do and then made worse. You know what I mean? Holy chat, you're going to have to calm down for this one, okay? We're getting to everything. You're going to need to calm down, okay? All the shoe derangement syndrome types, I understand, and this is literally for you, but you have to take a second, okay? Just shh. Okay. So, her content was, by any standard we'd hold, certainly pretty damn bad, but it was categorically different from a lot of the other skeptics at the time in that the seeds of her content did not later flower into an overt and objective advocacy for far-right politics. And you can see that in the way their content was back in those days, you know? The difference between Sargon and Shu, I think, is really clear in retrospect, and that's why one of them is whatever the fuck Shoe0nHead is, and the other one is kind of a neo-Nazi? I feel comfortable saying that because Sargon's, I should just call him Carl, right? Carl is a self-admitted ethno-nationalist who believes there's an international conspiracy of left academics and social justice warriors trying to destroy the white man, and he's talked about like Jewish-controlled businesses on Twitter, so I don't know. I don't think he's smart enough to figure the details out. Whatever. Anyway, whatever Shoe is, she's not a neo-Nazi. as far as we can tell. So thankfully, they didn't go in the same directions, okay? But a lot of people who watched Shoe actually did get pulled over into the alt-right, okay? And the reason for that is because when you are part of a broader community, having shared targets of antagonism can be all it takes for people in your community to make leaps over to more radical far-right perspectives. So Shoe wasn't alt-right, but Shoe criticized anti-SJWs in the way that alt-righters, covert or otherwise, did at the time. Meaning that if you see Sargon and Shoe and Milo Yiannopoulos all talk about the SJWs, you know, you can move people over to those positions. And you can implicitly endorse people on your side. There's always, you mean SJWs? You said anti-SJWs? SJWs, yes. You can always, just, you know what I mean, chat. Holy shit, I misspeak all the time. There's unfortunately always be a kind of groupthink, you know, behind the way we advocate for positions, and that's really annoying, but it's something that we have to take into consideration. That's why I always advocate for like a really holistic political agenda, you know? You all know what my positions are, and you know what I don't like. I can't, it's not really possible for my content to inadvertently lead you guys to adjacent content that I disagree with, because if I disagree with it, I would have already criticized it, you know? That's why I've thrown shots out at the woke skulls and the tankies and the class reductionists and the Nazbols and everything. So maybe you can get moved over to those positions, but if so, it's in spite of what I've said, not because of what I've said. At least I try. Whatever her faults, Shoe's always been a little bit ideologically eclectic. She supported Bernie Sanders back in 2016, but God, even Carl had notes of that back then too. And as time moved on, it seemed like most of the skeptic community began to fall apart in a way that wasn't necessarily reflective of Shoe's behavior. The skeptic community got more and more overtly, like, you know, right-leaning, and Shoe, well, she was never pro-Trump in the best of times, but she did make fun of SJWs for being too hyperbolic in criticizing Trump, a mistake that she's since beaten herself up for quite a bit on social media, but still a mistake that she made. Um, but years pass, you know, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and Shoe is no longer like a dyed-in-the-wool, on-the-right skeptic community type, you know? And this is when Shoe met me. Apparently, Shoe was just, like, browsing lefties to, like, see what was up, and she came across my channel, and she thought I was funny, which, true, I am very funny. And she came on one time. That was, like, early in my channel. I must have had, like, 20,000 subs at the time, you know? And she came on one time, and, well, I didn't know that much about Shoe. I knew that she wasn't the same as a lot of the other skeptic types because of some stuff that I had heard. For instance, I do know that Shoe was, while supportive of trans people, also kind of NB-phobic for a while, but then Shoe had a talk with Natalie, with Contrapoints, back in like 2017, and Shoe actually changed her position on that. I remembered that, and I thought, okay, that's not like a normal right-wing YouTuber thing to do, to have your mind changed and then delete the thing that you no longer agree with, you know? That's not like a normal thing to do. That's indicative maybe of some other intention or sincerity. So I thought, okay, this isn't like an enemy. And I talked with her and she was funny. And since then, to be clear, June has been a close friend of mine because she's always been like super supportive of the channel. And I think she's cool. And obviously the friendship does bias my perspective somewhat, but that's not going to stop me from tearing into her by the end of this little rant, okay? But she has been really cool, really supportive. And I do appreciate that, you know? Especially given my reputation, my odious optics, you know? Having like a larger YouTuber who's like got a broad audience. I mean, it's pretty cool getting that like implicit endorsement by being friends with her, you know? And also she's just pretty supportive. All that aside, you know, all that said, she came on one time. And then a little while after that, you know, people took notice, hold on. People took notice of the fact that she was coming on my channel and that I didn't necessarily have an explicitly negative opinion of her, which is what led to this video right here. Yowza, 2 hours long. Talking with Shoe0nHead, is she allowed in the left? Now, I want to be clear right off the bat, okay? That this wasn't my question. I don't really care who's allowed on the left. That's a really odd question to me. I don't like gatekeeping, remember? That's not a question that I would normally ask. You know what I mean? Like, who's allowed on the left? I don't really, yeah. For me, it's more about, is this person doing harm or doing good? What should be criticized? What shouldn't be? But this is the question everybody was asking back then. Well, should Shoe be allowed on the left? Well, she's certainly not like Carl, but she's more like this, and she has bad history, and so on and so forth. So, we had a conversation about, like, all the bad stuff that Shoe has done. And the two things that I remember, the two things that came to mind with Shoe, I think for the most part, were the racism and the Lauren Southern thing, you know? Which, in fairness, in case anyone doesn't know, at one point Shoe called Leslie Jones a gorilla. Leslie Jones is a black woman. So, yeah, that's pretty racist, no getting around that. And with Lauren Southern, Shoe0nHead was friends with Lauren Southern well past the point there was any justification whatsoever. Like, Shoe0nHead was a really, really obviously just kind of aligned with a white nationalist, or at the very least, not willing to publicly denounce her, which, you know. Now, my positions on these two things, okay? On the first one, with regards to the Leslie Jones issue, that's obviously horribly racist. I don't see a pattern of, like, anti-black racism from Shoe0nHead, so I don't know if this is, like, a permanent element, like there's some deep hidden core of, like, secret racism that she's hiding from the world, so much as it was a really obviously bad thing to do, you know? But people can make their own judgments about that. I do know that the degree to which you can assign charitability to other people's bad behavior is always going to be a subjective thing, because, to be fair, I've said a lot of really dumb stuff on this channel, and you guys still watch me. How much you like a person really determines the extent to which you're willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. You guys like me, I assume, so you're willing to give me the benefit of the doubt because even if you disagree with some of the stuff that I've seen, because you like me, you know, like, oh, well, you know, he's mostly like this. Whereas if you're not a fan of me, all you see is a clipped together compilation of every stupid thing that I've ever said, in which case that's what you form your opinion from, and you don't really have that charitability. So this is always going to be kind of a subjective thing. I certainly don't see, like, a huge pattern of overt racism in Shoe's work necessarily, so that's up to your personal opinion. I'm actually more bothered by the Lauren Southern thing, and I think it really ties into some of the criticisms we're going to lay into in a little bit. Shoe0nHead was, it's seemingly really quite intent to not let Lauren Southern's political opinions get in the way of their friendship. I think that was actually more indicative of some of the problems that Shoe was going to be having later, far more so than the Leslie Jones thing. But we'll get into that, you know, in a little bit. This is one of the reasons why people accuse me of, like, whitewashing Shoe. And this is, I think, the last thing I'm going to say that comes off as charitable here, okay? I really don't like that accusation, in large part because there's no way to falsify it. If you don't like my assessment of other people's character, it's always like he's whitewashing her, rather than we disagree on the extent to which this reflects poorly on a person's character. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you've been fans of me on social media, you know this. How many times have you been accused of just ignoring the bad things that I've done? And you want to say, you know, in response, I don't ignore it, I just take it into consideration and weigh it against the good things that he does. But then they're like, well, you just ignore the bad things. See what I mean? It's non-falsifiable. There's not a full equation being taken here. And for the most part, I think Shoe's content's okay. If you take a look at her Twitter feed and the videos that she posts these days, at the very least, you know, they're pretty distinctly left-leaning for the most part. They're not like covert alt-right content. And I think that Shoe's done polling in her audience, which has shown that they've moved to the left tremendously over the past few years, which I think is nice, you know? We talked about whether she's allowed on the left, blah, blah. And time moves on, and now here we are today. Okay, there have been like 20 stupid things that Shoe has done over the past year that I can think of that have somehow blown back to me. Because anytime this happens, I'm the first person who hears about it. Like I'm her fucking dad. Do you think I control what she does? People always say that. Oh, you just listen to Vaush. If I controlled what she did, do you think she'd keep doing shit that would get me in trouble? What if I had any control whatsoever on her opinions, do you think like I would be yes, now do this thing that will cause me 2 days of drama. What clearly I don't have enough control over her, because if I did, I'd be smacking the phone out of her hand anytime she got mad at a liberal on Twitter. No. That's not the issue at hand here, okay? This is a very, very stupid accusation. No, the problem is that where we are right now, Shoe0nHead keeps getting in hot water, and I think it's reflective of some extremely severe problems with the way she regards politics, okay? Because it's not just this thing, this like social media director then immediately leaving thing. It's other stuff too, like the being anti-immigration thing, or the disregarding the consequences of pulling out of Afghanistan thing, or the attacking liberals thing, or the this, or the that, or the... And some of her positions, on being anti-kink and pride were, I mean, they were more restrictive than mine, that's for sure. For instance, Shoe was throwing in drag queens with no kink and pride, which I absolutely do not. I think that being a drag queen is just like a fashion aesthetic. It can be a kink thing, because any kind of fashion can be a kink thing if you strip enough of the clothing away. But Shoe was kind of throwing that in there, implying that drag queens are a sex thing, which kind of implies that drag queen story hour is inappropriate around children. And it's like, oh, well, through implication, we've kind of arrived at a right-wing position from some of your beliefs here. And every time she does this, by the way, I call her out in it, and every time I get the same response, oh, sorry, I'm dumb, which does become less convincing with time. Normally, there are like 3 responses to this. Whenever Shoe does something like this, you know, there are 3 responses. One of them is total indifference, which I think is the response from most of her audience. I don't think her audience cares that much. You know, her audience, I think, is mostly kind of, you know, lightly engaged with heavy politics. You know, like they're a little nonplussed. And if they like Shoe, they're probably used to Shoe's shitposting behavior. There are a lot of people who are in my audience and hers, and I love all of you. I don't know the extent to which this tends to bother you. Again, charitability plays a really, really, really big role in all of this. So maybe you're like less inclined to criticize her because you know her better. Whatever. That's one response. The other response, and this is the one that always bothers me, and this is why I get accused of defending her all the time. One of the responses that tends to come up, especially from the left, you know, from you guys in part, is that Shoe0nHead is a grifter, that she's secretly right-wing and this is all grifting. At the risk of coming off like overly charitable, this is an objectively incorrect assessment of Shoe's personality. It's not just like mean, it's also like bad analysis of the situation. I can say this with like I would like I think that it's about as likely that Shoe is a secret right-wing grifter as Hunter Avalon is. And anyone who watches my channel knows what a high opinion I have of Hunter Avalon. An impossibly high opinion of his character, okay? Shoe is so unfathomably far from a grifter. It's impossible for... unimaginably far, okay? Now, you might think, oh, so that means her behavior's okay. No, that's not what it means, okay? Grifting specifically means lying for the benefit of some kind of personal gain, money or attention. Shoe does not lie about any of the shit that she does or says, okay? That's not the direction she takes things in. It's just not accurate. And she's not some secret double agent for the right. When I see people on my subreddit go, ah, so this is proof that Shoe is a conservative, I think you're getting things off on the wrong foot there, because not only is that like kind of dumb analysis, it's also putting other people in a position where they get to defend her. You know what I mean? Because Shoe is not a conservative. On most issues, Shoe is significantly to the left of the average American, sometimes radically so. She is absolutely not a conservative. That's just not the criticism to make against her, you know? Some people call her alt-right. What are we talking about? Come on. It's just dumb. Make a better criticism, okay? I'll make a better criticism. You're welcome. The third criticism, the third response that she gets when this type of stuff crops up is the one you guys are making right now, and it's that she's just stupid, And while I think that's certainly more likely than the grifting response, I also don't know if that's necessarily the most accurate assessment. Because if you actually take a look at the content Shoe produces, she's pretty effective at delivering a certain style of political commentary that requires a fair amount of thought, I think, and engagement, you know? To me, I think that stupid might be a bit of a shorthand. You know how I've said, like, for instance, like, Count Dankula is stupid, you know? In reality, he's probably not. He puts together content that's pretty effective and well rationed, and he's at the very least pretty decent at running an audience together. I mean, Christ, we've called like Ben Shapiro stupid here. But in reality, it's Ben Shapiro's opinions that are stupid. It's Ben Shapiro's political approach that's stupid. And likewise with Count Dankula and with Shoe. I don't necessarily know if it's a holistic thing. I think the problems are actually a little bit more sinister than that. You know, I think they actually go a little bit farther than that. The stupid thing, I think, is if there's any criticism that I'll lay at that accusation, and it's that it's too non-specific, you know? Shoe is very stupid about some things. So let's talk about that, okay? After I blow my nose, because, again, I didn't get a lot of sleep, okay? Whole body's falling apart over here. Christ. All right. So here's the issue. This is the thing that happened most recently, okay? Shoe0nHead was briefly announced to have joined as a social media co-director, the New York State Populist League, okay? There's nothing inherently wrong with that were it not for the fact that the New York State Populist League is a right-leaning organization advocating for a Republican mayoral candidate. And additionally, they also brought on someone who Shoe0nHead claimed not to know. I guess a Nick Fuentes type. Like, they brought on two people, Shoe and then another guy, and the other guy is like a Nick Fuentes type, America First conservative, like that kind of thing. I think. I mean, he's got the sunglasses, the rainbow shades, and he's got America First in the profile, and I didn't look too deep into things, but it looked pretty bad. The organization as a whole is anti-vax and generally conservative, but, you know, populist conservative. Yeah. Now, obviously, that's pretty bad. Shoe got some backlash, and then Shoe left. And let me tell you how this felt from her perspective, okay? We're gonna... This isn't charitability here, okay? This is more point of view perspective on a fish before it gets eaten by a shark. Let's watch this from Shoe's perspective, okay? Shoe went out to that, like, I think Medicare for All march. You know, the one that Jimmy Dore was a big fan of. There were a lot of people there who were sincerely Medicare for All. I don't think that's inherently wrong. But she went on out there and she met some people. And one of those people was like, hey, do you want to join our organization? And Shoe0nHead, unthinkingly, said yes. And putting very little to no thought in it, she just put their name in her Twitter bio. Yeah, I'm a populist. And they added her. And why wouldn't they, by the way? Why wouldn't a tiny organization like this add one of the largest political YouTubers in a public manner? Seriously, it's just good viewership for them. And then there was, of course, the blowback. She didn't seem to really investigate them that much or engage with what their intentions or interests were. But when I talked with her, she seemed to say, and I still can't believe she said this, she just thought it'd be fun. They're her friends. She thought she could change their minds. Now, it really boggles the mind, truly boggles the mind, how a person could ever believe that joining a right-wing organization would be an effective method of changing the minds of the people in that organization. What's funny is that this is kind of like a sick parody of the, by letting trans people into the CIA, we can make it progressive logic, just twisted around to the ideological opposite end. It's funny. This is like the idea that like letting people in with given opinions means you can transform like organizational structures. Now, I do want to be clear, by the way, the New York State Populist League isn't like an organization. There's no money, there's no budgets. It's literally just like a volunteer kind of thing. There were people saying she was doing it for the money. There's no money. Okay. They had like 400 Twitter followers. There was nothing else. I could make an organization if I want, like the Washington State Chad League or something, and get a couple hundred followers. And if I added people onto that, it would have about the same institutional legitimacy. Okay, so this was not a doing it for clout or for profit thing. This was a Shoe doing this because friends asked her to kind of deal. And that reminds me a little bit of the problems that Shoe had with Lauren Southern, didn't it? Shoe has a tendency to put friendship above politics. Or more accurately, don't let politics get in the way of friendship. Friends do favors for friends, and people talk with people to get along with people, and the political disagreements are just kind of, abstract, disagree, just kind of a fun thing, like an aesthetic thing. I know that she hangs out with a lot of right-leaning types, and I've talked with her about it, and do you know what she said? I kind of sympathize with this. Left-leaning types don't talk to her. And I get where she's coming from there, too, I don't really look around for social groups to hang out in because I hate all of you. But I do know for a fact that if I was actually trying to, I would not be, allowed to participate in almost any left-leaning social group, I know that for a fact. I remember back like a year and a half ago, I experimentally joined some of the larger left-leaning Discord servers, and the response to them was just insane. Instantly, the people rallying to get me banned from the server. Before I said anything, by the way, I joined the server, and the little bot would go, "New member joined, Vaush," and I just chill there, and invariably, within minutes, the rolling wave would push me out, So if that's Shoe's response, if that's what Shoe sees from the left, I don't necessarily blame her for hanging out with more ideologically diverse crowds, The problem is she doesn't seem to understand the difference between interpersonal engagement and public platform support. Because this right here is not an interpersonal engagement between friends. This is a right-leaning organization getting the clout belt of being directly publicly associated with a huge online figure. That is not like just, oh, I'm looking for friends to hang out with. There's no way of getting around this, Now, I don't think Shoe understands how this looks from a broader perspective, especially because Shoe is keenly aware that the left is constantly accusing her of being some secret Nosbel advocate. But from everyone else's perspective, Shoe doing this, the immediate consequence of this is that fans of Shoe are going to look at this right-leaning organization and think, oh, Shoe endorses this. Oh, I guess this is cool because Shoe likes it. And then they're going to move over to that, or at the very least have some of their opinions or perspectives influenced by the positions of that organization. That is the only thing that can come from this. That is the only thing that can come from this. You realize that, right? From the perspective of a public figure who has an audience that affects the broader political discourse online, the only thing that really matters is what your behavior does to the people around you. That's the point of being a public figure. What's the influence of a president if not for the effect they have on their citizens, We're all public figures. That's what matters most. So Shoe critically fails to consider that what she liked about joining up with this organization, the whole friends with friends thing, is meaningless in the face of public advocacy, whereas the thing she didn't think about is the only thing that matters. Whether or not people in her community are going to look at that organization and be positively influenced. Vaush, it's cool you're defending your friend and all, but we'll be moving on soon. Hey, mods, you can start banning anyone in chat who's complaining. Defending? Shoe critically fails to consider the effect that her behavior has on the broader audience. Shoe also fails to do this every single time Shoe gets in trouble on Twitter for saying anything right-leaning or anything dumb. And this happens pretty frequently, too, where she will go, anytime she is even remotely criticized by, a liberal, on something or another, anytime she's accused of not being left enough, she will freak out and quote tweet them and block everyone who disagrees with her and go in this whole thing where she gets run down an increasingly anti-intellectual cycle all the way to the end belt, okay? Recently, Big Joel did a video on this. Big Joel did a video on Shoe0nHead's anti-intellectualism, and I thought it was a really, really great video. Shoe0nHead has a really bad tendency of holding a position almost dogmatically, and then when anyone criticizes her, she reframes the discourse in such a way as to invalidate the other person's perspective, which effectively makes it impossible to criticize her in a way that she accepts. It seems like criticizing Shoe0nHead has one of two outcomes. Either she says, oh my God, you're right, I'm so stupid, and then does it again in a week, or she blocks you. Those seem to be the only two Shoe0nHead responses to criticism, It feels like I'm the only person who can criticize her consistently because I'm close enough friend to her that I can get away with it without getting blocked. And every time this happens, I give her shit, That's the reason why this video isn't being done in some cringy address to Shoe0nHead, like in some second-person format. Because after all this happened, every time anything like this happens, I give her shit for it. But I guess we're going over the Shoe0nHead question now, which I think we should probably get to. The Shoe0nHead question is, what the fuck is wrong with her? And the Shoe0nHead answer is, it's a combination of a number of problems with her character and the way she addresses politics. And I can boil it down to 3 basic points, okay? I think those 3 basic points are friendship politics, memification, and anti-intellectualism. Now, I can't address the anti-intellectualism any better than the Big Joel video, which I strongly suggest you all watch. This is a problem she continually runs up against. And it's a problem that infests a lot of her thinking. It overlaps with the memification thing as well, but guys, I don't really think Shoe0nHead, reads past the article header sometimes. I don't think that, I don't know if Shoe0nHead's ever read a study. Maybe she has. I know that she can read them because I've talked with her and stuff in private. I know she's capable of it. She doesn't lack the ability to do so. I don't know. I don't know if she ever has, though. I don't know if she wants to. It comes down to me, I think, to a disinterest in political arguments outside the extent to which they can be turned into a joke. It seems like Shoe0nHead is unable to engage with a subject beyond the extent to which you can make memes about that subject. The degree of nuance she develops on a given political topic, she doesn't seem to have an interest in extending it beyond a point where she can shitpost about it, if that makes any sense. And it seems like oftentimes her political positions will actually get truncated to fit within the confines of a meme. I think one of the best examples for this would be with the Afghanistan discourse, okay? Now, I have talked with Shoe privately, and pardon me for, revealing logs here, but Shoe's position on Afghanistan is basically identical to mine. That it is a tragedy what's happening in Afghanistan. However, the reason we're withdrawing is because it seems like the nation-building project wasn't working, and we would be there literally indefinitely, our presence acting as a radicalizing agent for the Taliban, and therefore keeping the country in a permanent stasis field where nothing actually gets solved. I've talked to her. That's her position. As far as I understand it, that is my position. And her position. We have the same position. I'm sure I know more about it than she does because we do different types of content, but fundamentally, we agree. Now, here's the problem. Is that what it looks like when she tweets about Afghanistan? No. She was making fun of people for pointing out that there would be consequences to the withdrawal. She was saying shit like, don't care, we need to take care of our own, bring the boys home, sounding like a fucking Republican isolationist, all of her positions got whittled down to the lowest IQ, most memified versions of themselves until they scarcely resemble the position I think she actually does hold, Yeah, it turns into Kyle Kalinske tier stuff. I know her positions are better than that, But when expressing them, it gets reduced down to the lowest common denominator. So why? Why does she do that? If she knows a position and then takes a worse one, why? Well, I think one part of this, I think, is she legitimately does prioritize shitposting as the medium by which she expresses political opinions. And the simpler a position is, the easier it is to get people behind hard lines where they agree or disagree with it. And that always makes for, in addition to better comedy, better political discourse. Less nuance means more division, means et cetera, et cetera. And that's good for engagement. Now, I don't think she does it for the engagement. I think that's how her brain is coded now because she's been shitposting for so long. I don't think she deliberately thinks, let me whittle down this position because doing so will bolster my profile or whatever. I think this is the medium through which she expresses herself, and unfortunately, her thoughts have been constrained by that format. I legitimately think sometimes she should probably take a break from Twitter, if for no other reason than because I think it is actually destroying her ability to understand the totality of the positions that she actually believes in. It's like irony poisoning, but somehow even worse. And there is a level of irony posting to it as well, too. She does this Pepe posting shit all the time where she won't own up to a position unless she's really pushed on it. I called her out on this when she talked to Hunter Avalone, remember? Remember when they were talking about whether or not it was unethical to make memes about guillotining the rich? And towards the end, when she was losing that debate, she was like, well, is it so bad to guillotine the rich? You know, like, indistinguishable from the way alt-writers talk and the way that they'll obviously adopt a position, but then like run away from it, but then like kind of jokingly adopt it. The irony posting stuff really bothers me unless it's clearly being done in a self-aware manner, you know? Here's a manner in which I think it's justifiable, okay? I think that every element of political control is manifested through political violence, okay? The police, that's political violence. Military is political violence. Choosing how much of your tax dollars are distributed to medical care and infrastructure as opposed to the military, that is a component of political violence. So when people ask me if I'm in favor of political violence, it's kind of a joke to me because I don't think there's anything outside of that, you know? I don't think there's a fundamental difference between the kind of political violence people vote on and the kind people don't vote on. All you're really doing there is moralizing through legality. And to me, that's a really silly way of analyzing politics. So when I say stuff like, no, I'm against political violence, I'm joking, and I hope you all know I'm joking. You all should know my position on this. I usually just do that because I don't want people, like, trying to clip chip me, you know? But you all know my position, and I stand by the position that I've just expressed to you, whatever I say. But sometimes Shoe0nHead, it seems like she legitimately either doesn't know what her position is and tests it through irony, or she ends up abandoning it and then later defending it in a pseudo-joking way, and that's not great. If anything, it suggests a fundamental inability to responsibly engage with political content, which I'll get to in a second. So, with that all put out there, you know, we also have the politics of friendship, which is something that Shoe0nHead has a serious problem with, okay? A serious, serious problem with. Now, this is most obviously indicated through the Lauren Southern thing, where, like, she has an incredibly odious friend, and she's not willing to publicly denounce because friendship should supersede political differences, and it seems like, and there's no way of getting past this, Shoe, when you do stuff like that, what's the difference between that and Ellen going to a baseball game with George W. Bush? Right? Like, you realize that, right? Like, you screech on Twitter about war criminals being legitimized through liberal bootlickers, and then you're like, oh, well, you know, they're just like my Nazbol Huey Long friends. Whatever. Like, this is literally the same thing. The only difference is you think that Nazbol Huey Long types are cool, and you don't think that neocons are cool. You realize that, right? This is entirely an aesthetic preference on your part. It has nothing to do with the principle of the matter. And it's really, really stupid. If you want to have friends who are right-leaning, that's fine. I don't give a fuck who you're friends with. But there's a big difference between who you're friends with and who you implicitly publicly support. And the reason why everyone accuses you of being a Nazbol is because you've done a very bad job keeping your friend interests and your political advocacy separate. If you had done a good job with that, nobody would be calling you a Nazbol, you know? Like, the reason this reputation is developed is specifically because there is not a distinction being developed. And if we notice it, your fan base does too. And there are people in your fan base who are Nazbols. And it's difficult to look past that when you're joining populist right organizations, you know? It's like this kind of stuff. This is not like just friendship. You have a huge platform and you don't want to use it responsibly. And the reason you don't want to use it responsibly, I'm talking to her again. I should be talking to you. The reason she doesn't want to use it responsibly is because Shoe0nHead doesn't think of herself as a political commentator. Let me ask you guys something. And this is for the boomers in the audience, okay? Do you remember the days, maybe a decade ago or a little further back, when it was possible for a large public figure to not be on the left, but to still be liked by the left, because every once in a while they would deliver like left-leaning opinions? You know what I mean? Like they weren't on the left, they were like in the center leaning, you know, and like comedians and stuff. Like there were a lot of comedians who were like this. They weren't like on the left, but there was a general attitude. Like every once in a while they would deliver an opinion and people on the left would celebrate it because it was in line with their thing. We don't live in this world anymore. Everyone has chosen a side. 2016 was the end of that world. There is no longer any, like, this person dances in the center and occasionally drops little, like, sprinkles of political advocacy on either side. There are people on the left, and there are people on the right. And there are people who sometimes play to the center, like Joe Rogan. But Joe Rogan isn't really liked that much by the left. For a lot of reasons. One of which, at least, we're going to be getting to by the end of this stream. Because I don't hold in high regard people who are equally amicable to far-right ideas as they are to simple, obvious, basic left-leaning ideas. You know what I mean? I don't know how many accolades should be given. Like, oh, you know, Joe Rogan has a ton of right-leaning people on there who legitimize their ideas, but he also isn't a climate change denier? Congratulations. That's very good of you, Joe Rogan. You're doing very good, Joe Rogan. Very in the center, very balanced. The thing is, we don't really have these like center-leaning figures anymore. And when I think of that type of person, I think of like comedians for the most part, you know? Because comedians for the longest time had the ability to dance on the margins, but now they don't. The most known comedians are pretty obviously pushed to one end or another, okay? Like, very, very clearly. You have comedians like Bo Burnham, and we know where he stands, and then we have that god-awful ventriloquist guy, and we know where he stands. And for the most part, if you cover any political content, your ability to align with a political bloc is determined mostly by how you feel about Donald Trump, because that's like the lightning rod, right? Bill Burr has his moments. Bill Burr's a wacky guy. Maybe Bill Burr is an example of this. Maybe what I'm talking about isn't gone. Maybe it's just a dying breed. The point that I'm trying to get to is that Shoe0nHead wants to be that. Okay? Shoe0nHead is not interested in being an ideologically consistent partisan bloc for a given set of positions. Shoe0nHead wants to be a dancing nymph with a lot of friends on all sides of the aisle who drops her perspectives and gets along with everyone, you know? I think more than anything else, Shoe0nHead doesn't want to let the expectations and boundaries of political advocacy constrain her. And to an extent, I sympathize with that, because I am way more willing to reach out to the right than a lot of other people on the left, you know? I do sympathize with that for a while, you know, or like to an extent. And a lot of people do accuse me for not really being a fan of gatekeeping, of doing this as well to the left, that I let people on the right in, or they think that it's bad of me to like speak in a friendly tone with, I don't speak in a friendly tone with a lot of people on the right, but I also talk to Chris Ray Gun. Hell, even the amazing atheist I've gotten criticism for talking to, which is wild because despite his checkered past, the dude is basically like an ANCOM now. He's probably farther to the left than I am. there are a lot of people on the left who really don't like the idea of people breaking sides. Remember Brunchgate? When Contrapoints got photographed with, among other people, Armored Skeptic and Shoe0nHead, that was the meeting where Contrapoints convinced Shoe0nHead that non-binary identities are valid. But Contrapoints got in a lot of trouble for that photo, being accused of some kind of tea sipping, brunch attending, liberal both sideser, Now I think stuff like that is really, really dumb. I don't believe in this consorting with the enemy type. That's why it frustrates me so much when I see dumbasses on the left who are like, did you see that photo of Vaush where he's palling around with Charlie Kirk and Tim Pool? Bitch, what do you think I went to Tim Pool's studio to do? Make friends? No. I went there to deliver left arguments to an audience of millions of people, okay? That's I didn't go there so I could after the show was done, we'd be like, that was fun. But in reality, I talk about by the way, we talk about the politics when the cameras are off too. You know that, right? When the cameras go off, it's not like we go back to brunch. We start, the discourse continues. It happened both times I went to Tim Pool's studio. The political disagreements continue past because we disagree on everything. But they think that we're just collaborating and that that anything less than us being fucking feral IRL. When I go to Politicon for the first time, you people are going to see so much cancellation on social media because I'm going to go there and I'm going to see people who I don't agree with and I'm going to be courteous with them and photos are going to be taken, and there is nothing I love more, by the way, than confidence mogging conservatives, okay? I'm going to find every conservative I can find, put an arm around them, and give the biggest fucking grin for the photo, okay? Nothing makes me happier than holding frame next to people like that, okay? Now, people are going to see those photos, and they're going to think, oh my god, Vaush is collaborating with the enemy. No, I'm not. I'm flexing in front of the enemy, all right? Let me have fun. I'm saying that I'm sympathetic to this behavior from Shoe0nHead. The problem is that my willingness to tiptoe across the line from time to time is informed by a pretty comprehensive understanding, at least I try to have a comprehensive understanding, of the effect this behavior has on my audience. Or, to put it more succinctly, exactly 0 people in my audience were moved over to the right because I took a photo with Charlie Kirk and Tim Pool. How many people in Shoe's audience do you think are going to be more amicable to these political positions foreseeing her association with them? That's the difference. I know what my audience does. I know what my audience is aware of, what they're interested in, and I know how to control my audience, at least with regards to giving favorable or negative opinions to different people or ideas. That's just a basic part of political messaging. That is just... Shoe, that's like 101 for public figures. How is your audience going to react to this? That's literally the first thing you learn. I learned this within a few months of starting my channel. I wasn't the best at it at first, but I got better with time. You've been doing this for far longer than me. And I know that I'm politically partisan, and Shoe0nHead isn't politically partisan in the way that I am. I think of myself as an advocate for the left, okay? Shoe thinks of herself as an advocate for what she believes in. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I'm not saying everyone has to fall in line, but at the very least, there are some skills and basic types of understanding that come along with being a political advocate that she can't keep not understanding. I don't think it's that she doesn't know it. I think she's just trained herself to not see it. Shoe0nHead, every time she does anything in public, thinks of herself as some and I'm inferring here, as some do or dare comedian. I really do believe that, a generally left-leaning person in front of a microphone whose first goal is irreverence beyond anything else. Irreverence and freedom. So she can make her jokes, but if someone in the audience heckles her for not being left enough, then what does a comedian do? Does a comedian stop the show and apologize? Of course not. A comedian's job is to make people laugh. So the first response Shoe0nHead has to any kind of criticism along these lines is to reflexively attack it in a way that maximizes the likelihood of her feral audience being driven against whatever left-leaning criticism is being made against her. Because that keeps the show going. Introspection is disallowed unless it can be done in a funny way, which is why Shoe0nHead's introspection always looks like her saying, "Lamau, I'm so dumb," or when she posts those memes of the Giga Chad where it's like, it's Chad to respond with anecdotes, or it's a Chad move to not read the article beyond the title. And the thing is, Shoe, those are only funny when I post them because they're jokes with me. But with you, you're actually bragging about anti-intellectualism. And there's a very different vibe when you're like, you can't co-opt that. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, here's a funny meme, okay? It's the Giga Chad, and he's off in the cosmos, you know, like he's a god, okay? And the title says, I poop in my hand, and the bottom says, and then put it in the toilet. Or something. I don't know. When I poop in my hand and then drop it in the toilet manually. Or something like that. Now, delightful meme, 9.5 out of 10. It's not funny if you actually do that, though. Or, I should be clear, it's funny once. But then if you keep doing it, it just becomes like a worrying coping mechanism, okay? Maybe it actually does stay funny. It's a little bit funny. You can't keep making those jokes. You actually do that shit, Shoe. You actually engage in that behavior. And I know what you're going to say when you see all of this, and you might actually be watching this now, is like, oh my God, you're right, I'm so sorry. But like, you always do that. You need to take a goddamn second, okay? And for God's sake, okay? You need to take a second and think for a second, okay? We live in scary times. You understand that, all right? I've talked to you in private enough to know that you are fully aware of the severity of the situation that we find ourselves in, okay? I know you know that climate change is a serious threat, okay? I know you know that QAnon and anti-abortion protests and this and that and what have you are serious threats. I know you don't actually trivialize these things, but the aesthetic of nonchalant trivialization is something that you've adopted so consistently on your platforms that it feels like you're beginning to buy into your own aesthetic. And then what do you have? You have like this rolling habit of memifying every problem, of blowing over every element or opportunity for introspection, of saying, oh, sorry, but then doing it again, of making friends with people with at best dubious political like positions, and then not understanding the difference between private and public association. How long is that going to keep going on? And I know what's happening right now, too. And this is the problem with what's happening right here and right now, okay? The problem with what's happening is that stuff like this pushes people to the right. So I feel like I'm almost held hostage by the inherent hostility of the left and the inherent willingness to abide of the right. Because anytime Shoe0nHead posts something left-leaning, you know what happens? You know what happens, chat? Anytime Shoe0nHead posts something left-leaning, the broader right stays quiet because they're waiting. And the broader left doesn't care because it's Shoe0nHead. But anytime Shoe0nHead posts something right-leaning, the right just pours accolades on her. Based and red pill, this is so good, this is so cool, amazing. And the left loses its shit. So if Shoe0nHead is getting constantly love-bombed by the right and hate-bombed by the left, I feel like I'm pulling against an inexorable tide that's always going to leave Shoe in right-wing social circles, and therefore to be influenced by right-leaning people. Now, of course, in reality, the right is every bit as hostile to political disagreement as the left is, but the right wants Shoe back. That's the big difference. Why do you think the moment Destiny started going anti-left, all the people on the right started sucking his cock? Sargon came on to suck his cock. Ian Miles Chung, Paul Joseph Watson, they all start looking at him favorably because they want one more person to add on to the belt, you know? The right is much better at taking advantage of and exploiting ideological dissonance within the left than the left is. When people on the right break rank, the left doesn't swell out in support for him. When did the left swell up in support for fucking Hunter Avallone? Hunter Avallone was a massive right-leaning YouTuber who not only did he move left, he went to a right-leaning conference and publicly said that the people on the right were full of shit for saying YouTube was discriminating against them. And where was the big left outsurge of support for Hunter? Nowhere. Zero. None. Nada. It didn't happen. The people on the left who moved to him were from my community and from Destiny's, and credit where credit's due, that's a good thing, but it should have been way the hell more. Why was it only us? It's because the left doesn't give a fuck about reforming people to the left. The left doesn't keep cards. The left does not make an effort to have ex-conservatives over. But there is nothing the right loves more than ex-liberals or ex-leftists being brought over. They get PragerU videos for this shit. Carolyn Borisenko is a uniformly unimpressive woman. She's unremarkable in every imaginable sense. But she got a PragerU video because she was in a knitting community and noticed people were mean to Trump. Every time this happens, they always get brought over. I used to be a liberal. And kablamo, here's your own daytime television show. The right is always going to tug on Shoe0nHead harder than the left will. And unfortunately, that is sometimes as much of a problem as Shoe0nHead's behavior. Because as long as the left is impossible when it comes to moving people over to it, you're going to have problems with people wavering on the margins, which is really, really shitty, you know? Now, none of this is meant to absolve Shoe0nHead of any of her behavior. She's an adult woman. She's older than I am. And all of this stuff that she's continuing to struggle with right now is stuff that I accepted as a part of the job very early into me doing this, okay? None of this has anything to do with absolving her or downplaying her ignorance on these issues. And this aesthetic she constantly cultivates of being this above it all, make friends with everyone, do or dare, not too committed to anything, always willing to, sit down and be friends with sort of both sides are, that she really, really, really hates when liberals do it to conservatives, but likes when she does it to like Nosballs. I just don't get it. I'm sorry. I don't get it. She needs to move over on all of that. Maybe it would be easier for her to move over on this if the left was willing to celebrate the good things that she does and says, and that would mean the criticisms are a little bit more salient. Remember, criticisms only mean something insofar as they are contextualized by positive affirmation. If all a community does is criticize you, then it all just sort of bleeds together and becomes meaningless, you know? Like, for instance, tankies. Have there ever been tankies who have made salient criticisms of me? I'm sure it's happened at some point, and I don't fucking care. Those people are insane. Maybe at some point, somewhere, in some form, a fascist has made a good point about me. I'm sure that statistically, somewhere, maybe they're like, oh, Vaush got this point wrong. Also, I hate Jewish people. Like, okay, maybe you got one on me. I'm not going to pay attention to your community hard enough to try to figure out which information is worth listening to and which isn't. I have to listen to communities that I feel have a balanced and proportional understanding of what I do and the ways in which I do it and how that content can be improved. And as long as the left can't do it you're paying attention, right? As long as the left can't do that for Shoe is going to struggle accepting criticism from the left. Again, this is not absolving her of her behavior, but it is something worth taking into consideration. Anyway, that is the Shoe0nHead question, as I understand it. Why is Shoe0nHead the way she is? Why does she act this way? Well, in my opinion, it's because she aesthetizes anti-intellectualism to the point that it destroys her ability to form nuanced points. She memifies political engagement to the point that her advocacy for positions always gets boiled down to what makes the best shitposting joke more so than what actually best addresses the problem at hand or what best advocates for the position she holds. And her friendship politics means that she will always prioritize the ability to make friends with people on all sides with forming hardline ideological barriers, and that because she can't distinguish between private friendships and public political engagement, she's going to keep signal boosting bad actors. Those are the three problems. Now, I don't think those three things make Shoe0nHead stupid. In fact, if anything, I think calling Shoe0nHead stupid kind of obfuscates the issues that I've just talked about. I know stupid people, and they're not all as harmful as Shoe0nHead has been. You see? Specificity is important. So maybe she's stupid with regards to those issues. Maybe she doesn't take it seriously enough. Maybe political commentary just isn't cut out for her. I don't want to believe that for a couple of reasons. First of all, because I do, in spite of all of this, legitimately believe that Shoe0nHead is overall an asset to the left. I do believe that. In spite of all the problems, if you were to take the ultimate abacus of fate and figure out where generally she's having the most effect, I do believe that overall it is one which is favorable to the left, pretty significantly for that matter. If you want to, you can go to Shoe0nHead's channel or her off-channel Brainlet, and you can watch her videos. And these are not like crypto alt-right videos. For the most part, they're anti-capitalist videos. But she touches on social progressivism pretty often. And yeah, Brainlet has always been apt. And in fact, I think she posts way more content there these days. Wait, it says she has 4 videos. Did she delete all of her Brainlet videos? Did she delete everything on Brainlet? Why did she do that? She privated the election videos? Well, unlisted. Anyway, I browsed plenty of the Brainlet content back when there was Brainlet content. And I think for the most part, her content is good. I really do think that. But that doesn't mean you can't be criticized. So in the future, when you're going to make criticisms of Shoe0nHead, I really wish they would be a little more substantive than she's an alt-right grifter or she's dumb. There are specific issues at hand here. Big Joel made a great video on the anti-intellectualism stuff that I am, again, going to recommend. I even watched it and then post a video of me watching it on my channel. So if you want to go look at that as well, that might be sort of a worthwhile accompaniment to the stuff that I've said here. My approach towards this issue has always been the same. And if you've watched me for long enough, you know what it is. Okay? If a person is beyond my reach, I watch their content on my stream to debunk it or to criticize it or to make fun of it. Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, whatever. If a person is within my reach, if they're a content creator, I have the potential to actually influence with my behavior, which at this point is most YouTubers, because I'm a fairly large creator, my goal shifts somewhat. It's not just about critiquing their opinions or making fun of them. It's also the more important question. Can I move this person in a positive direction? Is it possible for me to use my influence on this platform to move them to a point where they're doing better than they are now? Can I positively influence people? I'm sure I've had some influence on Shoe's opinions. She seems at least somewhat impressionable, though in my opinion, not impressionable enough, because again, if she was impressionable enough, she wouldn't keep doing this shit. All of that being said, the question remains, what can be done to maximize the good here? What can be done to, like, decrease the harm and maximize the good? And the answer to that right now is the same as the answer was 2 years ago, which is to critique her when she makes mistakes and praise her when she doesn't. And that's what I'm always going to do. All the people in my community who are screeching about how I need to denounce her, you really don't belong in this community, because that is antithetical to everything that I have done and everything that I have said since the beginning of this channel. You can hate Shoe if you want, and that is totally fucking fine. And I will never tell you that you cannot do that. But I have been saying this since the beginning of my channel. This denounce, cancel this person. This has never been my approach to anything pertaining to political engagement on YouTube. It's fundamentally counterproductive, not only in a utilitarian sense, because again, if I do that, she has like no left-leaning friends anymore, as far as I know. Which probably means she'll get pulled over to the right, but also from a practical perspective, why? The answer why is this: because of parasocial relationships, which a lot of you have with me. You don't like her, and you do like me, and you want me to denounce her because you're very invested in the aesthetic of moral purity that I would maintain by denouncing her. And, buddy, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be morally pure whether or not I denounce Shoe0nHead, okay? Have you seen my channel? You really think that's going to be the line in the sand that's going to make me draw this hard, gatekeepy line? Are you joking with me right now? If any of the people who obsess over Shoe0nHead are so strange to me. I get that she does bad stuff, but like, why hyperfixate on her compared to all the myriad conservatives out there who do infinitely more harm. Like, some people seem to act like she's somehow more harmful to the broader political discourse in this country than any of the numerous conservatives. They obsess and they fixate, and it's this constant obsession with gatekeeping people who are within or at least next to the left. Than that, my friendship with a person or my opinions on a person have nothing to do with the sheer utilitarian calculus you should be engaging in. Okay? It's incredibly stupid. And it does not escape my attention that a lot of the people who are that obsessed are from Destiny's community as well, which is funny because the worst thing Shoe0nHead ever did was legitimize Lauren Southern by continuing to be friends with her after it was clear she was a white nationalist, and Destiny was playing League with Lauren Southern just a couple of weeks ago. The irony of that does not escape me. So I like the idea that this is any hill to die on here, like, very, very strange to me if you're coming from that side of things. But utilitarian calculus, okay? That's what the name of the game has always been. So quit freaking out. Oh, yeah. One last thing. One last thing. Very important. Now we'll talk directly to Shoe. Now we'll talk directly. Oh, yeah, I denounced Destiny. Sorry, let me maintain my moral purity. I denounced Destiny. There we go. Whew. Wouldn't wanna... There we go. Now you all know. One last thing, and I can address Shoe directly for this one, but can I ask a thing of you? Is this possible? Is it possible that I could ask this thing of you, Shoe? Can you research a subject, any subject of your choosing? I don't mean reading op-eds about it or Twitter threads. I mean, I want you to find a subject on Wikipedia, just like any political topic. It can be contemporary or current events, and then I want you to run down to the citations at the bottom, and I want you to look through it, and I just want you to, like, take a moment to reflect. Yeah, homework. Yeah. I just want you to take a moment to reflect on the nuance behind any of the topics that you reduce through your engagement. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with presenting complicated topics in a simple way, even in a joking or mimetic way, but you have to understand the topics to do it responsibly. For the most part, I agree with a lot of the stuff that you say. I'm pro-Medicare for all, I'm progressive, I'm pro-trans rights, blah, 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 blah. But beyond all of that, I think it's important to just sit with it and, like, reflect on it for a second, you know? Because I feel like sometimes I worry you don't take this seriously. You think this seriously, but you don't take this seriously. Does that make any sense? I don't know. Maybe I'm being stupid right now. She's a 30-year-old adult. Let her live her life. Wait! Well, you can use that to say or do anything. What do you mean? The whole point here is that we're not letting people live their life, okay? We're meddling in their affairs, okay? Like Big Brother, all right? We're the nanny state, assigning homework at 27 to a 30-something-year-old. I don't fucking know.